Feel something?
Yeah. It's a fish.
Oh, yes! Yes!
Finally, it seems I am going to get face to face with my river monster.
We've been told Cleopatra was the most beautiful woman in history, the queen who seduced Rome, the goddess in human form, the woman who could bend powerful men to her will. But what if everything you thought you knew about her was wrong? What if the stories of her beauty and power were just the surface of something far more shocking? New DNA research and forensic reconstruction are rewriting the story of the last pharaoh, revealing a reality that no Hollywood film could capture. Cleopatra's greatest battle may not have been with Julius Caesar or Mark Antony, it may have been against her own biology. For over 2,000 years, historians have debated where she was buried, how she looked, and what her life really entailed. Most experts will tell you she's lost forever, swallowed by time, hidden under the streets of Alexandria. But one woman refused to. For 20 years, Kathleen Martinez has chased one of history's greatest mysteries, the final resting place of Cleopatra. But Martinez isn't your typical archaeologist in a tweed jacket, carefully dusting off artifacts. She approaches history like a detective approaches a crime scene, piecing together clues others ignored for centuries. While the world assumed Cleopatra's tomb was lost beneath Alexandria's shifting sands, Martinez looked elsewhere, 30 miles west, to a crumbling temple called Taposiris Magna. This forgotten site held secrets that would baffle even the most seasoned historians. Beneath the temple, Martinez's team discovered something that defied belief. A tunnel stretching over 4,300 feet, nearly a mile, carved through solid bedrock. 6 feet high, submerged in mud and water, it wasn't a casual construction. Architects call it a geometric miracle, a feat of engineering rivaling the ancient Greek tunnel of Eupalinos. Every twist and turn of the mile-long corridor hinted at purpose, precision, and a message from the past. Why go to such extremes? A tunnel like this isn't built for ordinary graves or minor shrines. The alignment with a sunken port nearby suggests this temple wasn't just a place of worship, it was a hub of power, a secret pathway to something monumental. Martinez believes this tunnel may lead to Cleopatra herself, to a sanctuary designed to withstand not just time, but the ambitions of Rome. The queen wasn't just hiding from Caesar or Octavian, she was hiding her legacy, her identity, her very body. Every limestone slab and every carved stone told the story. And while Martinez hasn't yet unlocked the tomb, the evidence gathered in this temple is already rewriting the rules of archaeology. Cleopatra's secrets are closer than ever, and Cleopatra's rise to power wasn't just a story of seduction and politics, it was a story of ruthless family warfare. Her most dangerous rival wasn't a Roman general, it was her own younger sister, Arsinoe IV. Unlike Cleopatra, Arsinoe wasn't content to sit in the shadows. She was a warrior princess, bold, ambitious, and fiercely intelligent. When Cleopatra was exiled, Arsinoe seized the throne, even leading an army that trapped Julius Caesar in the palace. History remembers the victors, and in this case, Cleopatra won, but not without leaving a trail of blood. Arsinoe was eventually captured, marched through the streets of Rome in chains, a teenage girl on display for the Roman crowds. Sympathy from the public saved her life temporarily, sending her into exile at the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, in what is now modern-day Turkey. She believed the sacred grounds were protected. She was wrong. In 41 BCE, Cleopatra persuaded Mark Antony to remove the threat permanently. Assassins dragged Arsinoe from the temple steps and executed her, a scandal that rocked the ancient world. For modern researchers, though, this horrific act became a clue. Knowing exactly where it happened allowed archaeologists to locate a tomb centuries later, known as the Octagon, and perhaps the key to uncovering Cleopatra's genetic secrets. Decades of archaeological searches finally unearthed a skeleton within this unique tomb. For years, it was believed to be Arsinoe, the queen's sister, and a potential mirror of Cleopatra's own DNA. The bones promised answers about her lineage, her ethnicity, her health, even her true appearance. But as with so many mysteries in history, science would soon shatter expectations. For decades, historians and enthusiasts debated Cleopatra's ancestry. Popular depictions painted her as purely Macedonian Greek, the last scion of the Ptolemaic dynasty. But the octagonal tomb in Ephesus offered what seemed like a tantalizing clue. Its unique architecture, a mirror of Alexandria's famed Pharaoh's lighthouse, suggested a direct link to the royal family. When anthropologist Hilke Thur examined the skull and measurements, she dropped the bombshell. The remains indicated the possibility of an African mother. Suddenly, the skeleton wasn't just a sister, it was a potential key to redefining Cleopatra's identity. For decades, writers like J.A. Rogers and Cenk Anta Diop had argued that history had quote-unquote whitewashed Egypt, erasing its African roots. Pop culture caught up with these ideas. In 2023, a Netflix docuseries cast a black actress to play Cleopatra, sparking intense debate worldwide. Millions were ready to accept the skeleton in Ephesus as the smoking gun, the physical proof that the last pharaoh's bloodline wasn't what textbooks had claimed. For scholars, it was electrifying. For the public, it was revolutionary. Could the Queen of the Nile, the woman who mesmerized Rome, have been of mixed or African descent? Every news article, every academic journal, every social media post treated the octagonal tomb as the mirror that would finally reflect Cleopatra's true face. But science has a way of complicating the most compelling stories, and in this case, the mirror was about to crack. The skeleton, once thought to reveal the queen, would instead unveil a far stranger, darker reality, one that challenged assumptions, rewrote history, and cast a long shadow over every theory about Cleopatra's identity. What seemed like proof of her African heritage wasn't what it appeared to be. When modern technology examined the bones in detail, it revealed a truth far more chilling than ancestry alone. At first, no one noticed. The show was still popular, the hunts were still dangerous, the rivers were still deep. But something felt wrong. When Jeremy returned to rivers he had visited years earlier, the silence was different. The water moved the same, the banks looked the same, but the life wasn't. The first warning sign wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. The bites slowed down. Where fish once slammed bait within minutes, now hours passed in silence. Local fishermen weren't laughing anymore. They didn't tell wild stories with excitement in their voices. They looked worried. Some of them said the giant ones hadn't been seen in years. Others said the water felt empty. Jeremy started noticing patterns. Rivers that once held massive predators were now filled with trash. Oil stains on the surface, chemical smells in places that used to be clean. Factories dumping waste upstream, dams choking off ancient migration paths. The monsters weren't being caught. They were vanishing. The scary part? It wasn't slow. It was fast. Species he had documented early in the series were suddenly hard to find. Not rare, not mysterious. Hard to find at all. Entire ecosystems felt thinner, quieter, broken. And that's when the question hit him for the first time. What happens to a show called River Monsters when the monsters are actually gone? There was an easy way out. He could fake it. The industry did it all the time. Stage encounters, script scares, add drama and editing, create danger where there wasn't any. The network would have loved that. But Jeremy refused. He believed the only reason the show mattered was because it was real. The fear, the mystery, the risk. If he started lying, it wasn't River Monsters anymore. So instead, he kept searching. And that's when he realized something even darker. The legends weren't dying because they were being solved. They were dying because the creatures inside them were going extinct. Villagers started telling him something he had never heard before. Not stories about attacks. Stories about absences. Nothing lives here anymore. Not like before. They're gone. These weren't myths fading. These were populations collapsing. The hunt shifted from curiosity to desperation. Every trip started to feel like a race. Not to find monsters, but to find them before they disappeared forever. And just as this realization started to set in, a new enemy showed up. Not from the rivers, not from the wild, but from the people paying for the show. And this was the battle Jeremy couldn't control. As the rivers grew quieter, another force quietly emerged. the network itself. Animal Planet wasn't the same channel that had taken a gamble on Jeremy Wade's dangerous adventures. Slowly, subtly, the focus shifted. Family-friendly programming, pet shows, vet stories, safe wildlife documentaries that could be aired in living rooms without anyone feeling nervous. River monsters didn't fit anymore. Every trip Jeremy planned became a negotiation. Budgets were slashed. Weeks of preparation were questioned. Trips to remote jungles were labeled too risky or too expensive. A hunt that once took months now needed approval at every step. Any delay, any cost overrun was scrutinized. And when executives started pushing for scripted drama, staged encounters, exaggerated attacks, manufactured suspense, Jeremy refused. The show's integrity had always been non-negotiable. No fake monsters, no cheap thrills. Reality first, risk second. That stubborn honesty, once his strength, became a liability. The public never saw the struggle. They only saw polished episodes of fishing, mystery, and danger. But behind the scenes, tension grew. Crew morale suffered. Planning meetings became arguments. Every monster Jeremy sought now carried not only the weight of nature's risk, but also the burden of corporate scrutiny. The official story when the last season aired in 2017 was simple. Jeremy had caught all the monsters he could think of. The fans believed it. It made sense on the surface. But the truth, years later, was far more complicated. It wasn't just money, ratings, or network whims. The rivers themselves were changing. Species were vanishing faster than filming could capture them. The legends Jeremy had followed for decades were disappearing in real life. Continuing the show meant making impossible choices: revisit exhausted species, exaggerate encounters, or exploit fragile ecosystems. Jeremy refused. The fight wasn't against viewers, critics, or executives. It was against time itself. And that decision, the quiet final choice, would define the real ending of River Monsters. Years later, Jeremy Wade finally spoke openly about why River Monsters ended, and the answer shocked even longtime fans. It wasn't ratings, it wasn't networks, it wasn't exhaustion, it was the rivers themselves. The monsters were vanishing, slowly at first, then with alarming speed. Giant freshwater fish, once plentiful and feared, were disappearing from the waters that had inspired generations of legends. The balance that had existed for centuries was collapsing under pollution, industrial expansion, and habitat destruction. Rivers that had once been alive with movement were eerily quiet. Every trip became a race against time, not to capture monsters on film, but to witness them before they were gone forever. The legends, the stories, the monsters themselves, they weren't just at risk of being forgotten, they were literally vanishing. Jeremy faced a moral choice: continue filming for entertainment, risk harming fragile ecosystems, or walk away to protect what remained. He chose the latter. Ending the show wasn't a concession to networks, it was a promise to the rivers. A decision to let the monsters live in memory and in nature, rather than on camera under human exploitation. He admitted that it hurt. Walking away from decades of work, adventures, and discoveries wasn't easy. But watching the rivers die, watching species vanish, he couldn't, in good conscience, continue for the sake of a show. This wasn't just the end of River Monsters. It was the beginning of a silent warning. The monsters may be gone from the water, but the story remains. And it forces a question on every viewer. What other giants of nature might we lose before we even know they existed? Jeremy Wade's legacy isn't just in the monsters he caught, it's in the truth he refused to compromise. And that truth changes everything we thought we knew about river monsters. Even after River Monsters ended, Jeremy Wade kept secrets that never made it to the screen. Stories too intense, too dangerous, or simply impossible to show on television. There was the river in Guyana where a simple misstep nearly cost a crew their lives. Supplies ran low,
Storms flooded the jungle paths, and the boats they relied on were torn apart by sudden currents. For hours, they were trapped with no way to contact the outside world, miles from any help. Cameras didn't capture the fear in their eyes. Only Jeremy's determination kept them alive. Then there was a time a 500-volt shock from an electric eel nearly paralyzed him. He described it later as feeling his body shut down from the inside. If it hadn't been for quick thinking and muscle memory, he might have gone under. Not all threats or from animals. Malaria, dengue, infections, and parasites are constant companions. Wade often joked that the jungle itself was the deadliest monster. And in truth, it was. Yet, despite the dangers, the most haunting moments weren't physical. They were the rivers themselves, dying. Wade had to witness entire ecosystems collapse, species vanish, and generations of traditional knowledge fade. Elders who once guided him with warnings of monsters could only shake their heads at the empty waters. He realized that no camera could ever fully capture the grief of a river losing its giants. These untold stories weren't just adventures. They were warnings. Warnings about risk, about nature, about humanity's impact. And they shaped Wade's decisions in ways fans never saw. Every shot, every hunt, every monster on screen was filtered through that lens of respect for life, for rivers, and for the fragile balance that had allowed those monsters to exist at all. And that's the part the public rarely understood. River Monsters wasn't just about danger and thrill. It was a testament to endurance, to observation, and to making impossible choices in the face of extinction.
By the time River Monsters ended, Jeremy Wade had learned more than any fish story could teach. Every river, every legend, every giant predator carried a lesson that went beyond the hunt. First, patience is survival. In some rivers, he waited days without a single bite, relying on instincts, local knowledge, and quiet observation. Nature doesn't follow a schedule, and Wade learned to move with it, not against it. Second, the greatest monsters aren't always visible. Currents, diseases, disappearing species, even human interference, these were the real threats. He realized that chasing a creature was only part of the story. Understanding the ecosystem, the water, the balance was what kept him alive. Third, stories are fragile. Every river legend he collected was at risk of vanishing as quickly as the monsters themselves. Once a species disappears, so does the memory of it. Jeremy understood that myths weren't just tales, they were a way to preserve knowledge about survival, danger, and respect for the natural world. Finally, respect is everything. No amount of fame or fame-driven pressure could replace reverence for the rivers. He refused to stage encounters or exploit fragile habitats for entertainment, even when the network pushed them. Protecting life became more important than capturing it on camera. These lessons weren't just for him, they're for everyone who watches the show. Because Jeremy Wade's journey isn't just a story about fish. It's about curiosity, courage, responsibility, and the consequences of ignoring the delicate balance of life on Earth. River Monsters ended, but the warnings remain. The rivers are quieter now, the monsters rarer, and the lessons more urgent than ever. And perhaps the most shocking truth of all is that the real monsters aren't the ones in the water, they're the ones we fail to notice until it's too late.